This is the In Focus podcast from The Hindu.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the In Focus podcast. I'm your host, G. Sampath. The new tennis season has kicked off with the Grand Slam, which likes to call itself the Happy Slam, the Australian Open. And this year, the Happy Slam has really been a happy one for India. For the first time in many years, we've had a singles player defeat a seeded player in the main draw of a Grand Slam, with Sumit Nagal defeating Alexander Bublik and making it to the second round. And we also have a new men's doubles Grand Slam champion from India, which is Rohan Bopanna, who has won the men's doubles title as well. So lots of things going well for India in the year's first Grand Slam. And apart from this, we also have a new Grand Slam champion in men's singles with Jannik Sinner finally coming to fulfill something which has been long expected from him. And in the women's section, Aryna Sabalenbka successfully defending her title as well. And of course, one of the big news topics was, of course, Novak Djokovic losing for the first time in the semi-finals of the Australian Open ever in the 20 times he's been there. So a lot of things to discuss, and in this particular episode, which is more or less a wrap-up of the two-week event, we'll be looking at a couple of interesting questions, such as, will this be the year that Gen X finally takes over from the big three of Djokovic, Nadal, and Federer? And how can Sumit Nagal build on his maiden victory over a top player at a major? And what is the significance of Bopanna becoming the oldest number one in doubles and winning a slam at the age of 43? And to discuss all these questions, we have with us Sudarshan Narayanan from the Hindu Sports Bureau. Sudarshan, great to have you back at In Focus.
Thank you so much, Sampath. Great to be here as well.
So, Sudarshan, to start with, I was just wondering, what about your thoughts on Bopanna's, big victory here? I mean, it's a fantastic achievement to become the world number one at 43, and I think in the same week, he also became a Grand Slam doubles champion for the first time. And I was just curious, why did it take him so much time? He's been playing for a long time, I think more than 20 years. I think he was partnering with a Pakistani top player as well. And what were the main challenges in your view that he has had to overcome? That we know he's won the mixed doubles title before, but that's not considered to be in the same league as the men's doubles. So what were the main challenges that he had to overcome that it took him such a long time?
One of the main challenges that he highlighted after this win was the lack of good partners. In the sense that doubles partnerships, they always tend to find people who complement their styles very well. He did have a very good partnership with Pablo Cuevas around about the same time he won the mixed doubles title at French Open in 2017. And then he had a very good partnership with Denis Shapovalov. The problem there was both were accomplished singles players. And once they got their singles rankings up, they sort of reduced their doubles play. So finding the right partner who can complement your game, as well as finding double specialists, that he highlighted was his biggest problem all these years.
But he had a great thing. He had a great thing going with Aysam ul Haq, right? I mean, it was he who broke away because of some Olympics-related issues or something. Like, why didn't he get back with him once the Olympics?
They did actually try a couple of times, because 2010, when Rohan reached his first Grand Slam final, which doubles final, that was at the 2010 US Open. Aysam was his partner, and they also qualified for the year-ending Masters. And then I remember they reunited at the Chennai Open in 2014, I think, which I covered. So there were these sporadic attempts to reunite and do it. And it's also a question of rankings. I think 2018 and 19, Bopanna's rankings weren't good. So when you combine two people who are ranked in the 50 or the 60s, you basically don't get into the Grand Slam. So that was also a problem. And Shapovalov's high ranking actually helped him and get onto the tour and notch up a few good wins. So I would say there's a combination of these factors, his ranking, his partner's rankings, playing styles, and not settling on somebody who was a double specialist. So now finally he has Matthew Ebden, who is a double specialist, and who has past experience of winning a Grand Slam. And for the past 1 year, it has just been a dream partnership between the two.
Right. So when you say the combined rankings of the two players make it difficult for them to get entry in the Grand Slams, I mean, are you referring to the doubles ranking of each of the players, or it wouldn't matter if the one of the player is ranked high in singles but doesn't have a doubles ranking, and still it will make a difference in terms of entry?
A few years back, they did allow players to enter doubles with their singles rankings. I'm not sure if that system is still prevalent, but with Bopanna and others who don't have a singles ranking, it was basically a doubles only ranking. I'm not exactly sure which ranking of Shapovalov was actually considered for him to enter, but there was a time in 2018 or 19 when singles players would actually enter doubles with their singles rankings. And that sort of put huge pressure on the doubles players, because I remember Leander once saying that even if you're ranked in the 30s, you wouldn't get into a Masters tournament because it was only a draw of 32. And especially in places like Indian Wells, which is long drawn, 1.5 weeks, people like Stan Wawrinka, Tsitsipas, all used to play doubles. So that was a problem, but I'm not exactly sure whether that system is still prevalent.
Right. I mean, that would have, of course, definitely made it very difficult for the likes of Bopanna, and India has traditionally tended to produce more doubles players than singles one. Anyway, coming to the singles side of the story, Sudarshan, now Sumit Nagal making it through 3 rounds of qualifying. I mean, he was denied a wild card, which was his to take, by the AITA, India's Tennis Association, for reasons which didn't seem particularly convincing. I mean, you get a chance for a wild card with a good candidate to take and run with it, and I mean, I don't know what kind of a board or association would do something like that to their own player.
Yeah, AITA's only power is in Davis Cup, and when Sumit actually said no to Davis Cup in Pakistan, they basically wanted to be small-minded and do this. And I'm not sure this is an behavior that fits a national tennis association, which ultimately, at the end of the day, should look out for the improvement of its players and improvement of the tennis profile in the country. And if Sumit Nagal's entry in an Asia Pacific Grand Slam, which calls itself an Asia Pacific Grand Slam, would have certainly helped increase the profile. And we all know what happened now. And credit to him, he came through 3 rounds of qualifying, won a great match against Bublik in the first round, and suddenly everybody was talking about it, and everybody sort of lagged onto it, and there was huge interest, and that was sort of continued by Rohan Bopanna towards the end. So these 2 weeks of tennis and the interest it generated should actually tell the AITA that even if they put half their efforts in bettering the game in the country, they can actually see that there is a lot of interest in the game.
Right. Sudarshan, I was just wondering, there was a lot of stories and reports around the time Nagal was playing the second round about how he had to sort of face a lot of financial trouble. When at one point he had very little money left, I think some 800 euros or something was the figure being quoted left in his account. And now everybody seems to believe that the prize money he would be taking home from his second round appearance would sort of set him up for the rest of the year. I mean, is that likely, or is it like still a bit of a stretch? Because we know how expensive it is for singles players to make things happen. The travel and not taking a coach along, physiotherapists along, all those things cost a lot of money. So how much of a platform do you think this Australian Open performance will be for Nagal? And what more does he need to do in his game? I mean, we saw the game against JC Shank, who was like, I think, 7 or 8 years younger than him, and was really playing brilliantly. And where does he go from this? Would it just be like a good payday, or would it be something more than that, so that we can see him develop and maybe make it to the top 30, top 40 at some point?
It will definitely give him a lot of confidence. In terms of pay, I feel that it will take care of his travel for the rest of the year, at least. And if you actually enter tournaments with hospitality, which is there in most high-ranked, high-end challengers and ATP 250 onwards, the hospitality for the player and the coach is taken care of. So if that is taken care of, and then he has the money to book his flights and other stuff, so it should set him up for the year. Though there will be other expenses like he might need to get nutrition supplements and other things. But the majority of the cost should be covered by what he has achieved at the Australian Open. In terms of tennis, I think it sets him up really well because Sumit generally tends to play better as the clay season starts. And he has got a good number of points from this tournament. 3 rounds of qualifying also have ranking points, and then the first round. And he has basically stayed relatively injury free. And one of Sumit Nagal's problems, or in general, the talented Indian players' problems, has always been that they have not be particularly played a full season without injury. Now he looks in good shape, and immediately in the next month we have 3 challenges at home. He can make good use of those challenges, and then from March and April, when the European clay season starts, it can actually be a good springboard for this period of the year when he generally tends to have good results. So I think it should give him a lot of confidence. And considering he's just on the outside of top 100, his main aim now should be to get into the French Open main draw without any wild card or having to come through the qualifying. And if he gets some good results in the next few months, I'm sure that's possible.
Right, and as far as his tennis goes, where do you think, let's say, what maybe 2 or 3 areas which you think, which you might want to identify as areas where he can actually, if he is able to make quick improvements, it will make a big difference to his competitive outcomes?
I think his serve, because he's not blessed with great height, so he has to make do with more accurate serves and where he serves and spot serving. So otherwise, especially against a player like Zhang, we saw in the Australian Open that they can be easy pickings, especially from somebody who is a bit taller and a bit more powerful. So I think his fastest improvement that he can make is in his serve, where he can get more accurate on his serve and put more balls into play so that he's in the point.
Right. And I was also when watching his match, and I thought when under pressure situations, he tends to become a little passive. I think he was pretty passive with Shang, and against Bublik, I think he got a little bit lucky as well, because even on the match point situations, he got a double fault, and that was taken care of. Maybe mentally also he needs to work on the mental aspect as well. Do you think?
Yeah, and only when you play at this level, when you have so many opportunities, will you also learn. Because challengers can get you to a certain level, but tour level tennis is definitely a bit higher, I would say, especially in the latter rounds. And when you are up against the best 128 players in the world, you will be put under these pressure situations. And if he actually plays more at this level, if he's consistently in the top 100, where he will consistently play in the Grand Slams as a result, I think he should get better at these situations.
Right. I think we can all hope for the best and keep our fingers crossed that he has a great 2024. Moving on to the rest of the men's draw, Sudarshan. So were you surprised by Djokovic's semi-final exit when he played against Sinner? A lot was expected from that match, but it didn't really go the way many thought it would. It didn't go to 5 sets, and Djokovic didn't really play at the level he was supposed to. I mean, he was expected to play.
I would say I was a bit surprised because he looked very flat. I have not seen Djokovic so flat in recent times. There will at least be some things he'll be trying to do, or some things that may work. And a lot of people actually thought that the third set might change things. But I felt Sinner was extremely good. His pressure handling was superb in the match. And even in the third set, he was serving behind. And generally, when you serve at 3-4, 4-5, 5-6, these are opportunities that the big three, especially, or the big four, I would say, the top players won't let go of. One break, they will try to get there. And Sinner's serve in those games was superb. And even in the tie break, it was a case of very small margins, because Djokovic had 2 mini breaks and Sinner came back with 2 mini breaks of his own. So I will say, even when he lost that third set, and people were anticipating that Djokovic will make a comeback because he has done it so many times from that situation. For once, I think Sinner was still the better player, and he kept his head, and that's what actually got him across the line.
Right. That was quite a bit of a surprise for many because when earlier Sinner had been in similar situations and he had lost, having won the first two sets against Djokovic, I think at Wimbledon. And there were people raising doubts about his mental strength and all, but now I think he has finally put that to bed. And coming to the final, Sudarshan Medvedev, we know him, and I think they played a lot of finals last year. I think the last three matches they played, all of them, Sinner won, having lost the previous six. And yet, when they came out to play the first two sets, Medvedev was all over him. I was wondering, can you talk a little bit about what kind of tactical changes or adjustments Medvedev made in the first two sets against Sinner that he was like so dominant, and then what changed from the third set onward?
I think one thing that we could notice is that Medvedev played Sinner the same way he played Hurkacz. And after the Hurkacz match, actually, he explained what he did with his return position in that on-court interview with Jim Courier, and where he said generally he stands way behind the baseline so that the ball sort of slows down, and then he takes a full swing. I think with both Sinner and Hurkacz, the ball never slowed down, or it didn't slow down until it reached Medvedev. So he took up pretty good aggressive return positions. And with Sinner, he did say that he was not going to have the physical advantage. Medvedev was coming into the match playing 25 sets. I think it was the most by anybody until the semi-final. He had gone through multiple five sets matches, and one of the matches he finished at 2 a.m. So his whole idea was to shorten the points, and Sinner is extremely powerful in long rallies. And as much as he hits these winners, he doesn't crack in those long rallies, which is a big advantage. So even Medvedev thought that he would not last physically. So I think that sort of explained why he was so aggressive in the first two sets. And I felt he relaxed a bit in the third. There were moments, I think it was 4-4 and deuce, and there were a couple of tentative points, which if Medvedev had played differently, the match result might have been different. So I think the first two sets he was extremely aggressive, which we have not seen Medvedev do against a lot of other players.
Right. I mean, yeah, I think it was the physical amount of the amount of matches Medvedev had to play, as in the amount of time he had to spend on the court. I think that must have made a difference. Definitely, 25 sets in 2 weeks is definitely not a joke. And coming to the women's side of the event, Sudarshan, I mean, we finally had Qinwen Zheng making it to the final of a Grand Slam. She was voted the most improved player on the WTA last year, and Sabalenka, Qinwen final. I mean, a lot was expected of it, but it turned out to be a one-sided affair. Do you think Qinwen Zheng has the game or had the game to have made more of a match of it than it turned out to be, or it was expected given how well Sabalenka had been playing through the fortnight?
I would say a bit of both. Sabalenka was supremely confident the way she was playing through the fortnight. She hadn't lost a single set. And more importantly, her serve and her +1 shots were firing. And Zheng was a bit tentative, I would say, in the final. And it also didn't help that she hadn't faced any of the top 50 players until she came to the final, because her side of the draw had completely opened up.
Yeah, why does this? I was just going to ask you about this. Why does this seem to keep happening with the women's draw? And we saw this happen with Emma Raducanu's US Open campaign the year she won it. I mean, I don't think she faced any top 10 player either until all the way to the final. And this time, Qinwen faced her first top 10 player in the final, and she lost. And on the other hand, the other side of the draw of Qinwen, we had all these top players knocking each other out. And you have Qinwen making it all the way without facing a top player. Like, why does this seem to keep happening in the women's side of the draw? Is there any particular reason you think?
I'm not sure if I have any particular reason, because it does seem very quirky. And even in that US Open that you mentioned, I think Leila Fernandez, like you said, had to beat every top player on the other side because she beat Osaka, she beat so many top players just to get to the final. And I think this time it was like three or four upsets sort of sent a lot of top seeds tumbling. I think Jessica Pegula lost early in the second round, if I'm not mistaken. Rybakina lost in the second round. Swiatek lost in the first week. So there were just these odd one or two results which sort of just opened up the draw. And yeah, Kokogov versus Sabalenka was one semi that people would have expected, but the other side, I don't think anybody would have even expected the semifinals we got.
Right, right. And on the men's side, Sudarshan, I mean, I was just watching the various new names which have come up, and some of those guys, their level of their game is really. I mean, I found it very impressive. You know, Arthur Cazot, the French guy, Dino Prismic, you must have seen the what a fight he gave to Djokovic, and Alex Michelsen, who played a very good match against Alexander Zverev. I mean, do you think these guys have the potential to challenge the likes of Sinner, Alcaraz, Rune, or are they more of a top 20 rather than a top 5 material? I mean, what do you think of these new young players coming up?
Maybe not yet, but when Runa and Sinner were coming up initially, say some 4 years back, we all thought the same, and they all went on to become good players. So I think they all have time on their side. Frankly, I have not watched that much of them because the Challenger circuit is where these guys predominantly play, and they do get into these Grand Slams once in a while. But we should always be sort of. I mean, if somebody is good enough to get into the 128 in the Grand Slam, I feel they can pretty much go higher. Top 5, top 20, I'm not sure if I can really hazard a guess on that, but they must be made of a certain level to be playing in a Grand Slam. So I'll still watch out for them.
Right. I mean, I think that's a very good point, well made. I think if a player is made it to the top 128, I think they definitely would have a great potential to make it to the top 20, especially if they are teenagers like Alex Michelsen is, or 2021 like Dino Prismic and Artur Kazoban, who all gave a very good account of themselves against top players like Urkac and Zverev and so on. Anyway, I think we would love to go on chatting, but one last question before we wind up, Sudarshan. So, I mean, last it has been pointed out by many that the generation, the new generation, the Gen X, the players born in the 2000s, I think now have more Grand Slam titles than the 90s generation, which was basically just two with Dominic Thiem and Medvedev. And now Sinner and Alcaraz between them have three titles. And those three titles have come at the expense of the big three, so unlike the other two guys from the 90s. So is this finally the year when Gen X takes over firmly from the big three, or they have to wait longer? What do you think?
I do want to believe that it's the change, and yeah, I think it's going to happen either this year or next year. Sinner seems ready, and Alcaraz, though he has had a bit of an up and down the last few months, someone who has thrilled us so much with his first two Grand Slam tournaments and seems so full of potential. I think he is also here to stay, and these two can actually headline the next decade of tennis. So I do feel that there's a transition coming. I don't think Nadal will last beyond this year because he has had an injury setback. He's coming back. So Djokovic is probably the last man standing. And Sinner actually showed that Djokovic can actually be beaten tennis-wise at this stage of his career, even if he's not physically suffering or any other reason. So I do feel the change of guard is imminent. Maybe this year or definitely next year.
Right, a change of guards does seem imminent, and for the moment, maybe the big three could be Djokovic, Alcaraz, and Sinner. But very soon, I think the Djokovic slot might be taken by one of the others, maybe Rune, maybe somebody we don't know yet, but who's going to bust onto the scene in 2024. on next year. Thank you so much, Sudarshan, for sharing your insights and observations. Absolute pleasure discussing tennis with you. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Sampath. Pleasure to be here as well.
In Focus will be back soon with analysis of the biggest news issues. In the meantime, you can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and other platforms. Just search for In Focus by The Hindu. We'll see you soon.